Today we're looking at post-Civil War's role in industrialization. Last year we talked a bit about the Civil War, but now we're going to look at how it really did shape the rest of American history. Now, industrialization, what does that mean? Well, great question. It's really the idea, it's the period, it's a time that human society uh, human society is changing from more farming based, agrarian based society into an industrial one. So, whereas prior to the Civil War, you have most people really just living on farms, working on farms, being involved in agriculture. After the Civil War, and what we're going to be looking at for this year in history, people, majority of them, they live in cities and they're working in factories. But why did the Civil War really spur this movement? Well, that's what we're going to look at today. So, one of the big causes of this change from agrarian agricultural society to one which is far more industrial based is improved production methods. Since during the war, you have both sides trying to produce a great deal of weapons and clothing for their soldiers, producing a lot of food. The people that are making money off of these start developing techniques which can vastly increase production. And one of those main ones you have, or main ideas, is what's called division of labor. If you look in this image, there's a whole lot going on. This is actually a glass factory, and everyone in the factory has a different role. So you might have some people working the bellows, where the fire is. You might have some people, those people are in the back here. You might have some people in the front. You see some boys with these long metal rods where there's glass bottles on it. So division of labor. Each person has a different role. So instead of one person making all the glass bottles, you have 20 people, each with a different specific role. And having that separation of labor increases production vastly. Also have new products that are being produced. People are demanding more things. So we have a lot of inventors and different inventions coming out. We'll talk more about those another day. But you have things like the typewriter. That's actually Frederick Douglass's typewriter on the left. So it looks quite complex, but you're having factories that are producing typewriters to increase communication. Also, you have things like barbed wire, which seems extremely simple, but became an extremely important aspect of American society, especially in those farms. You have to keep livestock in. How do you do that? Well, barbed wire became the answer. You also have things like the telegraph, the telephone. You have trains. We'll talk about those later as well, though. So you have products that are being produced as well as demand for products. And when you have all these new things coming about, you need to have money behind it. And during the war, there was a lot of investment. People are investing in these factories that are producing, and the government is buying a lot of goods. And with all this money that's being put about, people want to invest it in different things. So if you had maybe $10,000, maybe you want to invest it in a new company that you saw. I have a friend that just invested a bunch of money in a fantasy football drafting site, and now they got $41 million. So you have these people that have all this money, and they want somewhere to put it. And for a lot of people, you have it in these businesses, these factories that are producing items. And with that investment, you have a lot of growth. So people are now having more jobs just because of these. And when you have jobs, you get paid more, especially from working on a farm, and you can buy more items. So really the money starts driving the economy greatly. Now we're mostly talking about the North. We're not really talking much about the South. The South very much remains pretty agricultural. Uh, if you remember before the Civil War, the South predominantly, we had cotton, tobacco, indigo, all these agricultural products. Now that hasn't changed. That has not changed at all. You still have a majority of the people in the South living on farms. And while slavery has ended, you still have a lot of the former slaves living on the land that they had always lived on. Now they're being paid, not much, and in some cases they are simply just working for their living. Now this is a practice that's known as sharecropping, and now sharecropping is really the process where you have someone that owns land and they allow a tenant. So you might have a former slave, a tenant, so just someone who works on the land, to use that land in return for some of the crops. So really, if you were all living on my farm, I would allow you to live there if in return you would give me some of your crops. Now it's a very good deal for landowners. If you're a worker on the farm, it's not much of a deal at all. As well as sharecropping, we also have something called tenant farming. They're very similar. It's very hard to distinguish, so we won't try now. But sharecroppers and tenant farmers. Now, they could be African Americans, but there's also many white families that are also living on these farms. For the most part, these farmers that are living in the South are extremely poor. Only the landowners are really the ones making any money. So the South very much is missing out on much of this industry, whereas the North, they're investing far more. If you recall a bit from Reconstruction, the North was really one of the reasons why they won the war, was because they had all those factories. And since the South is so badly beaten, it's very difficult for them to start trying to approach and develop new technologies and other new ways of life. So they continue to remain in that way.